Hi, and welcome to this tutorial on the island hopping strategy that the United States used in the Pacific Theater against Japan. To understand island hopping, we're going to do a very short case study of the United States invasion of the island of Iwo Jima. So first, this is a picture of Douglas MacArthur, who was the general in charge of the Pacific Fleet. And he's going to give a really simple explanation of how to island hop. So the first thing you do to island hop is you bomb the island. And that is in order to weaken the defenses of the Japanese soldiers that are defending the island. Then you invade. Usually the U.S. Marines would be part of the invasion, and they would come off of a ship and invade across the beaches. And once you take control of the island, then you build an airfield on it in order to allow your planes to land and refuel and stage other bombing runs on other islands. Now, the really important thing about island hopping is the word hopping, and sometimes students misunderstand what it means, so I wanted to take a minute to be really clear about why they use this method of island hopping. So as Douglas MacArthur realized, it would be almost impossible to invade every single island that the Japanese controlled. First of all, there's a lot of islands out there. The Japanese army was very strong and dedicated. They would, in many cases, as you'll see on Iwo Jima, they fight to the death. And it would just be a long time and a lot of dead American soldiers if they took every island. So island hopping means that you just attack some islands, and you pick the islands very carefully. You pick islands that don't have very good defenses, and you pick islands that either already have an airfield or an airstrip on it, or a place where you could build one. And so they're going to skip over the islands that are heavily defended and just maybe bomb them, but they're only going to invade some islands and just pick the ones that are going to be the easiest to take and the best to make an airfield. So let's look at Iwo Jima. And if you look here on the screen, you'll see Iwo Jima here and how close it is to Tokyo, so that's really important. But the first thing we're going to look at is all of these red lines. So in the 1930s, Japan attacked Manchuria, and then Korea and the rest of China, and then all the way down to Hong Kong. As they wanted to expand their control, they started attacking down into French Indochina and taking some of the former French colonies into Borneo. They took the Philippines, and they were even pushing all the way down to Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands right off the coast of Australia. It wasn't until 1941, however, that the Japanese attacked the United States here at Pearl Harbor, and you'll be learning a little bit about that in other parts of the lesson. So once the United States was attacked at Pearl Harbor, we declared war on Japan and started a counteroffensive. The most important place, there was battles in the Philippines where the Japanese won and other places throughout the Pacific, but the Battle of Midway was the turning point in the war, and the United States brought a fleet from out of Hawaii and met the Japanese fleet at Midway Island, and they surprised them and destroyed a lot of their airplanes while they were actually on the aircraft carriers. And so that was the furthest that the Japanese were able to extend their control. But this is actually when the island hopping campaign began. So the first place that the U.S. went was down to protect its ally Australia off the Australian coast. And then they moved up into Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, as well as the island of Tarawa. They skipped over some islands and went to North New Guinea and skipped over many of the Marshall Islands. They kept making their way. There's Manila and the Philippines where they went, the Mariana Islands, and then to Iwo Jima. And you can see how close we are here from Iwo Jima to Japan. So Iwo Jima was a really, really important battle, and we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. You'll see after Iwo Jima they attacked Okinawa and eventually used both Iwo Jima and Okinawa to attack Japan. So this is a really, really famous picture of U.S. Marines planting the flag at the top of the mountain on Iwo Jima. There's a statue that was made of it, and it's really a testament to the grit and hard work and perseverance of the U.S. Marine Corps. Here's a picture of Iwo Jima, and that picture um, of the men planting the flag was on top of Mount Suribashi. But as you can see in the background over here, this is where the airfield was. There's actually already an airstrip right there on the island. So let's look at the MacArthur strategy. So bombing, and then invading, and then building an airfield. The U.S. bombed Iwo Jima for 74 straight days. When they invaded, we had 110,000 U.S. Marines storming those beaches versus only 22,000 Japanese. So again, 22,000 to 110,000 are much better odds than maybe a different island that had more than 22,000 Japanese. And they didn't have to build an airfield because there was already one there. So they could immediately start using the airfield, use the bombers to destroy Japanese cities that were so close by. In terms of Iwo Jima, there were 6,800 U.S. dead and 20,000 U.S. wounded. But the Japanese fought to the death, and so almost all 22,000 of the Japanese soldiers that were protecting Iwo Jima were killed. And then after taking the island, the U.S. used it to attack Okinawa, but then they also used both of those air bases to attack every single of the 67 most populated cities in Japan, which eventually brought them almost to the edge of surrender, and then the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the final blow. So looking back at the map, you can see right here that Iwo Jima and Okinawa were the two stepping stones that we need that were closest to Japan. This is the same map that I showed you before. And so that's why those two islands were so important. And finally, to review this tutorial, I think there's three important things that you need to remember. The first is why. Why island hop? And the reason why is it's too hard to invade every island, but they really needed to take some islands in order to not have to fly their bombers and fighter planes all the way from Hawaii or further away. How did they do it? They first bombed the island, then they invaded it, then they built an airstrip, and then they skipped the next island or the next series of islands and fly over those before selecting the next island to invade. And the effect? The U.S. got close enough to Japan to destroy all 67 major Japanese cities without having to attack every single island along the way. So this has been a very short tutorial on island hopping. Hope you enjoyed it.